not going to have teachers that go out on leave for any one of a number of reasons would be fool's gold. So to take money out of that and create a new position, and then have to explain why you ran out of money because you might have had somebody out with an illness, you might have had somebody out giving birth, you might have had somebody out for a wide variety of reasons. That was not something that we thought would be in our collective best interest.
Well, through February, you still had 100 in the collective for sub accounts. You still had about 140,000, 135,000 unexpended and unencumbered. I mean, I just have trouble that something that was that critical and I wasn't looking at finding, 500 here and 1,000 there and various accounts scattered throughout the budget. I just looked at some of the big ones.
Well, that's the biggest one there is. That's why as we come down here to the end of the year, we're going to have part of the reason why we will hit where I think we'll hit 600 is 130, 140 of those dollars, 140,000 of those dollars are coming out of the substitute line.
Is that, Jeff, is that substitute in a normal year? I mean, it can vary, I'm sure, but is that usually an account that you would spend down or expect to spend down in the course of a year? Some years being better than others or worse than others?
You're right. I mean, last year, looking at the actual expenditures, certified was 129.4, non-certs was 45, substitute certs for special services was 48, and the other one is 26. That's $240,000. And what we went into this year was roughly this, let's see, 70, 50,
263.
263. So last year we spent 240 and we had 263 in there. And we were obviously having a good year. And when you look at our health reserve, you'll see that good year extends into the health reserve as well.
Fewer teachers out sick, fewer money spent on substitutes, fewer dollars out of your health account.
So yes, I mean we're looking at a health. Just got the latest one hot off the press, and of course I think we all understand that this will be skewed the last 4 months of the year, but we were still tracking even to slightly better than what we did last year, and last year was a decent year. We put $240,000 additional in our healthcare budget for this year, and we were tracking at a pace the same as last year. So we were looking to have a decent fund balance. I mean, we are the reserve fund balance as of the end of, let's see, when was this printed? May 11th, it was done today, is $529,000. So we feel pretty good about finishing the year at about $600,000. Our average claims in a month are 200. So we'll be in the 2 to 3 month claim reserve that was suggested to us by Brown and Brown at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Jeff, can you give a little bit of insight into the reality of potentially opening, hopefully, schools in the fall, and how you guys are thinking about what that could look like and how that could need or kind of give a need for extra resources or extra thought in how to resource the schools that are a little different than what we're used to every year?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that, Devin, because that I think is item 3 on our action and discussion points for tomorrow's board meeting, and that is the reopening of schools in the fall, and that'll be something that we'll be talking about. And so rather than give you something off the cuff, I invite everyone that's on this Zoom to come to the Board of Education meeting tomorrow and listen to that discussion.
Jeff, can we just go back to the insurance just for a minute?
Sure.
Because every year, I seem to remember that we have a discussion about efforts that you're taking to reduce the insurance costs, and I think it's great that you're turning up a reserve, a surplus, meaning people are healthy, which is a good thing. But this year in the budget, before the COVID and before the adjustments that you just made, which I don't believe encountered or considered the insurance line at all, the insurance was increasing 226,000 or roughly 10% across the board. And that just seems excessive to me. In fact, it made up 1.4% of the total 2.9% or 4.7%, I'm sorry, of the total increase that you had in the original budget. So can you tell me, is there any room in that number?
Well, we take our lead from Brown and Brown, who we pay to help us through this. If you look at our insurance reserve for the past 3 years, 17, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20. In 17, 18, we were underwater $105,000. 18, 19, we were underwater $57,000. And 19, 20, we finished in the black for the first time at $47,304. At the end of last year, we put an additional $150,000 from our surplus into our reserve budget because we were worried about ending up in the red again. But the last 2 months of the year, when the numbers came in, were considerably lower than the average had been for the first 10. So we ended up with a little extra. The work that you see in terms of better results on just the dollar number claim side is I think we're seeing the effects of going from a PPO to an HSA, and in 1819 excuse me, in 1819 it was the teachers, in 1920 it was the teachers and the administrators. Next year it'll be all 4 of the unions, including the non-certified, the paraprofessionals, and the custodians. So if there's anything that we've learned from this, is that the information that we receive from Brown and Brown, and really across all the boards of education across the state, is that an HSA seems to control costs a little bit better than a PPO.
All right. So, but still, is there any room in that $226,000 increase that you think you might have to reduce it a bit?
Oh, could we cut it back some? I would reserve that for another month, but I mean the last 2 months. Sorry for this. Last 2 months have been 146,000 and 146,000. And I dare say that May and June will probably be the same. And so, yes, we will have a decent reserve balance close to 600,000. We also know that for the last 4 or 5 months, there's a whole lot of people that didn't go and get surgeries or procedures done that they needed to get done. My wife is a registered nurse. She works at a surgery center in Trumbull, and they closed. hoping to reopen soon, but they closed for 6 weeks because they decided that they couldn't and they shouldn't take any additional patients, take any patients, not heck with additional. So my expectation is they will, the folks that need the colonoscopies or need their knees replaced or need cataract work done, that will see that pick up. So the gains that we're making here the last 4 months, I would expect a considerable spike in health claims next year.
Makes sense.
So to answer your question, is there some room? I don't know. I'd like to think that there might be a little, but again, we played Russian roulette with insurance before and have been on the wrong side of that discussion 2 times here in about the last 6 years. So, given a choice, I'd rather keep
My
the
times were
reserve.
largely related to far above average claims
Pardon
that
me?
you were experiencing, not so much that we had cut the amount in that line item.
Now, if you look over the last, I mean the information sheet that I'm looking at here is 14 to 15. The average increase in the annual budget was somewhere in the 110 to $150,000 range. The last this past year it went up 240, and it's 266 for next year. So I think the increases that we've put up are more in line with what with what the health claims situation looks like. Now, if we end up reserve balance, then obviously there's that's higher than it clearly needs to be. So that would be something then that we would look to look to reduce.
What's the reserve that you think you need?
Well, what the again, what the experts have told us, the people that we hire to consult, is that it should be an average of 2 to 3 months of what your average claims are. And over the past 3 years, our average claims are $204,375. So put it in a box, it's 600,000, and that's going to be about where we end up. And I would think that we'd be on the higher side of the 2 to 3 month, just because of the just because people will start to get work done that maybe hadn't done it in the past because of COVID.
Okay. You mentioned in a earlier in the call, going back for a minute to the negotiations on the with the union. You mentioned that there'd be trade-offs made in any negotiation, and that you needed to end this meeting with some more detail to be able to advance those discussions. Can you just explain what it is that you need to walk away from this meeting with in terms of?
Well, I actually told them that there was this meeting tonight. There was our board meeting on Tuesday, and then there was another Board of Finance meeting on the 14th, and that I would be getting back to them either on Friday the 15th or no later than Monday the 18th with my sense of what we as a board would like to do.
Okay. Who else has questions?
Can we just talk about the central office just a bit?
Central office is voted on by the 3 boards. That's obviously Reading, Barlow, and and us. We have a meeting coming up on Tuesday, May 26th. It's our last regularly scheduled meeting of the year. There has been some conversation about should this be relooked at. I'm not the chair, but whether the chair will put that on the agenda or not, I don't know. But I think conversation is always something that's positive. Now, do I think
Does your board support the opening of that discussion?
I'd have to ask them.
Are you going to?
No, I'm going to keep it a secret. Of course, I'll ask them.
The Region 9 board has said they're willing to reopen the central office. Obviously,
Okay.
they need at least one of the other boards to go along with it. And
well, I think that's the discussion for the board to have, and I have no doubt that we will.
Because there are some of the increases in the central office are above average. And just so your board's aware, on the downside, the decision was that there will be no increases for elected officials or non-union employees on the town side. So it obviously, if the many of the bargaining units are getting increases in the 2 to 3% range, and central office staff in some cases are as much as 4%, that may not sit well with some of our employees. On the subject of the central office, one of the significant issues in there is the new data analyst. Can you tell us what that's supposed to do and how that's supposed to affect the classroom experience?
Well, we have. Well, first of all, thank you for asking. Yes, somebody once asked me that. They said, "Well, what do you do when you walk into an office and you spend some time there and you see that there are things that are lacking that could be addressed with the right configuration of people." The central office is right now it's 11 people, and they've been 11 people like forever. And the world has changed, and the amount of data that is available to us to help in our curriculum development, to be able to see what we're doing well and what needs to be improved on in the classroom. All the data is there. And amongst these currently 11 folks who are trying to handle the day-to-day and work with 3 different boards of education to be able to dive into that data and give us real-time information, it never happens. So the business manager from central office just resigned. Real shame, because he was a real sharp guy. And the receptionist for the board also retired. So there are 2 openings, and therefore an opportunity, I think, to revisit what the structure is, and if there's a way that we can improve it using the dollars that we already have.
What's the kind of data that you're talking about? Is it standardized scores, or is it teacher student evaluations, or?
The data is from the various testing work that we do, and we get back scores, but there's a ton of data with those scores, and you can look at the scores and say, okay, well, that was pretty good. We did well. It used to be back in the day when there was before the current testing, where we would get information back from the testing unit that gave us 25 strands of different pieces of information within each child's test and what they did well and what they didn't do well. You put that all together in a and look at an entire classroom. It gives you the ability to say, hey, you know what? Maybe in this math class, we need to help this particular teacher with fractions, let's just say, because there's the strand on fractions is showing a less than stellar performance. Those things are there for reading. Those things are there for let's see, was reading, writing, and math, and of course, you know, now that stuff is there for science as well. So again, it's a lot of data, and somebody has to look at it. Somebody has to go through it. Otherwise, it just sits there and it becomes old news.
Have you tried to do any analysis on a spot basis to look at some of that data? You mentioned fractions in a particular class.
Sure. I mean,
compare that to the feedback you would get from the classroom teacher and the assistant principal who is working with the teacher to say whether or not you're going to get something that's going to be more impactful at the class level.
Well, you're hopefully any good educator is going to draw information from a lot of different sources. What the formal testing does is it gives us a platform to be able to pull data when we have time, or when someone can find the time to do that amongst all the other duties. So to have someone that was a data analyst that does this every single day, and obviously will do it faster than people who don't do it as a day in, day out routine, is going to give us better data and therefore make us a better school.
You know, in the private
I would
sector,
also say, going into a year where the kids have been out of school for months, that having a data analyst who can look at the first set of benchmark data to really help teachers' curriculum. They're going to have to basically remap their entire grade level of curriculum to meet where kids are, because most kids have probably lost at least 3 months of learning from the pandemic. So with the data analyst, I would argue going into next year is probably one of your more important central office positions. It's like that job alone, to work with teachers to help them start kids in the right place. It's a huge ask.
but it's not going to help with the initial work in the classroom, because the data showing the effect of the distance learning isn't going to be available until months into the school year.
No, one of the first things that kids will do when they get back is they'll take a benchmark assessment, and they'll compare that assessment against where kids, basically looking at the benchmarks from other from other years to say, where do they fall against the norm, the typical norm at this grade level? And then they'll basically look at where those gaps fall and be able to then map the curriculum back to those areas that need additional support, depending on where those gaps are. So the very first thing that most kids will do when they go into next year is some sort of DIBELS or Acadience test. And so, because they won't have any data from this spring, which is a huge challenge.
Normally it's the springtime when we do a lot of testing, and obviously none of that happened this year.
Hey, Jeff, how many, so you lose 2 people left. How many people are you adding?
We would like to get those 2 people back.
Is that in addition to this data analyst?
No. We had a receptionist, and she retired, and the general feeling in the office was that they didn't need a receptionist. So they wanted to take her salary and each district added $11,000 to her salary, and those were the dollars that were going to give us a data analyst. So the net cost of this person to the district was going to be the $11,000 from Easton, and then 45.886% of the cost of Region 9, because obviously we pay the bill for Region 9 with our tax dollars.
Right, but is the sense that the data analyst is actually a full year, full-time position?
I'm sorry.
Is the perception, is the belief that the data analyst that you're looking to bring on is really a full-time, full-year position?
Yes, it is. My goodness, yes.
So, yeah, so data isn't just a one-time thing. You're getting data from kids all, like literally they benchmark. So you have typically 3 big benchmarks a year. You have your pre, your middle, and your end of year. And then you're constantly progress monitoring using those same types of tools. And they're all tied to kind of those larger assessment windows. And so that data analyst is constantly going to be looking for gaps. And right now, especially in a year like next year, literally there's nothing that prepares educators for this, because we've never had a time when kids are going to have been out of school for this length of time and have associated with this kind of associated trauma. And I work in education. I've done it for 20 years. I can't really, like, the idea that not having somebody who really understands data and can look at what's a normal year versus where the kids are going to be across K through 8 to really help educators understand those gaps and then how to fill those gaps quickly. It's such a vital role. And I know it doesn't, like, if you're not in education, it's probably hard to understand, but the amount of data that teachers are going to need, and then to be able to respond very quickly to fill those gaps, it's crucial. People are basically going into next year very blind, because it's very hard to know how this will impact kids. There's already initial research out. I sent it over to Andy this morning. I'm happy to share from NWEA, which is a huge researcher. They're saying kids are going to enter into next year in reading at least 4 to 6 months behind, and in math up to a year behind, because of this kind of gap in their education. So it's significant.
No, and I accept that. I'm not doubting that. I'm just questioning whether or not a data analyst is a 2,080 hour a year position. I mean, because that means they have to have fresh input every day. You know,
No, because they're looking at over 800 students' data points. So it's not, and they're also looking and reading math and science. So you have 3 different subject areas, 835 kids. You're also looking at RTI data. So it's not just one data point per subject per kid, it's multiple data points per kid. So just in reading, for example, the DIBELS at a kindergarten level, you have 4 or 5 different measures that all come together. So you're looking at 5 different measures, probably at least 3 big benchmarks per year, and you can do up to 20 progress monitorings per 1 year for 1 kid. So again, it's multiple data points per child in reading and in math and in writing and in science. So it's not just one data point, one time a year, so you're constantly looking at data to inform the work that you're doing. And again, I would say next year, it's an even more urgent position, given the realities that we're facing and the unknown of how much of an impact this will have, and then how to really take what is normal and try to extrapolate that to what has happened, and then try to figure out what is the new normal going forward. What does growth look like when you've lost 6 months of instruction or gone through remote learning as a kindergarten? What is normal? I don't know. So how can we then figure out what that normal curve looks like now in this new interesting space, and what does growth look like in a month when you're potentially in class for half of that month, or out of class doing distance learning for the other half of the month? So just, again, I would argue that that is one of the more crucial positions in this budget.
And Greg, I would also just to remind that it's not just the 885 kids that Easton has. It's the it's the 880 some odd kids at Barlow. It's it's 700, 800 kids also in Reading. I mean, this is a tri-district position, so the person has a lot of responsibility across the board.
And I think, listen, whatever business we're in, we all use data. We all need it. We all want to find out about it. We all want more of it. It would seem to me that the purpose of this is to figure out whether we're spending our money in the right way, whether it's being spent effectively, whether the kids who are the end product of that money being spent are getting the benefit of it in the right way, and whether we as an administration can monitor the people who are providing that service to make sure they're doing it the way they need to or the way they have to. And if they're not, we always ask for data. How do you know that? How do you really understand that? What are the facts? We can be provided with data that shows that a particular course of action works or doesn't, is economical or doesn't, is being distributed effectively or doesn't. And a lot of that is more than sort of the old principal going down the hall and saying to the math teacher, "How's Johnny doing?" I mean, we've hopefully progressed, but I think that this kind of expenditure, really from a fiscal standpoint, gives me the ability to say we're doing the right thing for the kids and we're doing the right thing as the administration with our people, or we're not. And if we're not, then we can fix it.
Who else?
All right, I'll say something.
Okay, Paul.
So true to form, my suggestions are going to be probably the most drastic, and I'll say my piece, and then you guys can ignore me afterwards. I'm gonna put together here two proposals. The first is by far the most severe and drastic, and it's basically comes from my belief that I think we're overfunding the education budget significantly, and I think there's room for savings, and I'm going to explain how. The first target is $15,684,000, which is exactly a $1 million decrease in the budget, which is about approximately equal to the maximum decrease we're allowed to give you based on legislation. The second proposal is the same as last year's budget, $16,684,000, which I don't think you're too far off from in Jeff, what you proposed so far. I'll give you guys a roadmap on how you can get to the first option, and then the second option will just be a subset of the second option will be a subset of the first option. The first option, the most severe. Now, I recognize we don't do line item allocations of anything. That's up to you guys. But here are some suggestions on how to get to $1 million decrease. So the first, we've talked about this in the past, buy an ag cover for your health insurance or release the excess funds. Remove one teacher from each of the grades K through 5. Remove 4 cafeteria and recess and kindergarten aides amongst all the various ones that we have. In between the two schools, Keller and Staples, there are 800 kids. Barlow also has 800 kids, and I think they probably have one of each of these positions versus 2 like we do between the two schools. So there may be duplication here between a principal, a psychologist, special ed, pathologist, mentor, therapist, custodians, and secretary. If we had only one of each of those instead of 2 that we have, it would be the same ratio of kids to each one of those specialists that we have in the high school. And then removing some teaching staff from Keller as well. Overall, this, to get to that 15 million number, requires an overall reduction in staff of 15%. This changes the average class size in Staples from 18 to 22, and the average class size in Keller from 20 to 27. Then with all these changes, the spending would return to $17,722 per student, which is almost exactly the same as what we spent in the 2017-18 year per student. Now, as a Board of Finance member, my goal is to try and get the budget equal to the same mill rate as last year. To do that, would require significant changes. It would be some of those changes, but even if we implemented, if we went all the way to the 15 million number, we still can't get there. So we'd have to use a significant amount of money from our current surplus. I guess what we're trying to do tonight is trying to figure out where we fall between those two. Well, we're close. Jeff's proposal was close to the 16,684, And then the lower end, the other goalpost would be the 15,684. I would vote for something anywhere north of the 15,684.
Paul, I don't even know what to say to that.
I figured I should have told you to buckle your seatbelts.
No, I don't think that would have helped.
But I'm just one guy, you know, the rest of the board may or may not agree with me. I just had to say my piece.
I appreciate you saying your piece. I'll give you mine. Unless someone is going to bother seconding the $15 million proposal, I just think we thank you for your input. And I'd prefer to kind of talk more along the lines of where Jeff has been, I think very responsibly bringing a number to us. I think we do need, and I think, although I think that the town would support, even through this tough time, responsible, good spending for education, and they will, and they would. That duty has apparently been charged to us without the benefit of a check, of a vote. So I think we need to understand that we have a responsibility to education, whether we like it or not, whether we want to do it or not, and we need to do it responsibly. I take a look at Jeff's number, and I take a look at $241,000 in cuts from the Board of Ed, many of which I would not have supported, but those came to us without any work on our part. Asking for 335 of their return surplus to us, still giving us maybe 300 or close to it to rely on from the board is a good faith act by the board, and I think a responsible act towards the next budget. And I think when you look at zero-based budgeting, or you don't want anything to increase, we're looking at a 0.8 increase.
No,
Less than from the Board of Ed budget. I think Jeff said his number would be, if they return on surplus and they keep the 330, about 0.8, which is less than 1%.
No,
Right.
you're ignoring the 335.
No, I'm including the 335 to make up that number.
Oh,
No, that doesn't take you to 0.8% increase.
The 0.8 is 132,000 of new money. The $333,680, which has already been spent and paid for, so to speak, which ends up as a surplus for us, gets taken out of this year's budget and put in the special account for next year.
So yeah, so no, my point is, you're looking for about 132 in new money.
Right.
That coupled with the 335, which would roll over, would give you essentially a 0.8% increase in. Well, hold on, is that correct, Jeff?
$460,000 increase on a $17 million or thereabout budget.
So what Art is saying is, if you take the number that they proposed, the initial, my eyes are getting bad, 17,391,000, you back out the 241,000 that was addressed, plus
Correct.
back out the 336,000 that gets you, I'm sorry, 333,600, that gets you to a 0.8% increase.
Correct.
Right, but that's
taking this year's money and putting it towards next year.
Right.
Yeah, that's not a 0.8% spending increase.
Correct.
It's more than that. Yeah.
But let's face it, it's not an irresponsible amount of money that's necessary to run the Board of Ed and to educate children. We have a responsibility to do this job and to educate our children, and just making up a number and saying, I want to take $1 million out doesn't mean we have a responsible process or a responsible result. We have teachers to pay. We have children to educate. We have a grant list that doesn't go up. I get it. It tends to go down, but we're trying to do more. We're trying to do what we can with a shrinking amount, essentially, every year. And to hold a Board of Ed and a town to a flat or relatively close to flat increase in a time like this is a heck of a job. But to look to take $1 million out just because we're going to take $1 million out, no. It's not a responsible way to meet the needs of this district, period. And I think if we want to try and get to where Jeff is, I think the town can afford it. I think we can afford it. We are running a significant surplus from years past, which we have to deal with. But I think we can certainly get to a responsible funded Board of Ed budget along the lines that Jeff is being proposed with his cuts, which I don't like, but even with the board's cuts, with superintendent's cuts, and get it to a point where we can get close to that flat number, if that's what we really need, without endangering any more the educational quality for the students in this town.
You know, one of the unintended consequences of all of what we've gone through for the past 3 months is we didn't spend as much money as we would have if we were still in the school building. So one of the favorite comments here is, well, let's think creatively and let's think out of the box. Well, here it is. Take it. The 333,000. It's under the Board of Finance control. It is for educational purposes only. And if we don't spend it, if we operate the school system for next year at 98% efficiency, we won't even need to touch that money. But I can't make the budget and have the teachers and the programs that we need without knowing that money is there.
Jeff, what's the maximum number that number could be? The 333.
That's it.
Sorry, what's 2%? 2%?
That's the max, or that's the minimum, or
The max is 2%.
Okay.
So to answer your question, which I think is where you're going, could it be less? Yes, it could be
no, I was hoping to make it more.
less. That's a nice thought. We could put some money in
That's
in
effectively
healthcare.
That's effectively what we're doing anyway. Whatever the final number turns out to be for the Board of Ed, and if we have the ultimate goal of making it 31.33, we're going to take money from the surplus, which is where this money would have gone anyway had we not had that money.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's just mechanics. It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
I get it. Yeah, no, you're right.
No,
Yeah, I would just chime in.
Is Paul making a motion to put more money from surplus into education? I heard.
Actually, I was. Yeah,
That's what I heard.
Yeah,
Now we're talking, Paul.
I was. That's exactly what I was doing.
Well, then, as long as we
You better
fund
end
it,
this
the
meeting.
debate should be funded. I'm
Make
good.
Progress.
And I think we can do that and get to a close to flat.
Tara, what were you going to say? The accountant in the house.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Jeff, I was going to say I appreciate your opening remarks and particularly acknowledging that our students may need additional resources than when we met a few weeks ago. And the common theme in all of our conversations with every department is how we can best help and best service our residents. And that's not only a financial responsibility. And I certainly commend and appreciate the effort to find the cuts that you did. I think it was 241 was the number. But I think that's somewhat of a contradiction to your opening remarks. And I'll be honest, I'm disappointed to see those cuts. I think the 121 people and students that wrote to us, have voiced what a detriment not having those services have been. And the financial executive in me is just thinking about, the simple concept of return on investment. If we aren't willing to invest what is arguably the best asset of our town, we would be foolish to not expect to see a reduction in our home values as a result. And, I think that we need to, as I've said before, we need to look at this in totality in the obvious issue that we need to do is what is best for our students, particularly in this unprecedented time where their education has been, for the most part, significantly cut off. And how are we going to catch them up to speed? And I don't think $1 million cut to the budget as presented is ethical or fiscally responsible for the investment value of our town. That's my opinion.
Jeff, I have a couple more specific questions.
Sure.
The legal budget for the last 2 years has been 41,150, and you bumped it up to 60,000 this year. Could you explain what the reason is for that? You haven't spent much in the last 2 years either.
Yes, I can. One of the offshoots of the pandemic and distant learning is we are not able to provide things like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy is difficult, I would say. And as a result, we have special needs students that are not getting the they're not getting the help and support that their IEP says that they should have. And so we get the opportunity then to defend ourselves to concerns from parents. And because we are a burden of proof state, one of 5 in the nation, where if a parent came in and said, I'd like my child to be evaluated, then we have an obligation to evaluate them and within the school. And then if they're not pleased with the result, then we get the opportunity to pay for an evaluation from an independent doctor, and we pay the bill. So coming back to where we to when we start in the fall, whenever that is, there's going to be a lot of parents who are going to be very concerned about their children and are going to want to know where does my child stand as again as it relates to their special education. And so we have little doubt that we're going to get an opportunity to not only defend ourselves, but also to provide at our expense evaluations of those children. So that's why that number is up.
But that number went up long before the COVID issue came up.
Yes, we had a. I don't think this is privileged. We had. Let me ask Scott. Scott, is this privileged? Scott Rice is
muted. Scott is muted.
Sorry. I think you may be referring to a particular expenditure, a particular payment that Rob was. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Just the legal.
Yeah.
Just the legal budget.
Yes. It's privileged. Yeah, that's what I thought. We've had expenses prior to COVID.
Sorry, Jeff, can I, I'm sorry, it's Tom McMorrin. Can I interrupt? Sorry, I think part of what the reason why we've bumped the legal allowance is that we're going into negotiations with the teachers union this summer.
Yep.
And those are very, delicate and complex. And at some point, we're absolutely going to want to have the district's lawyers in to get us the best arrangement with the teachers union.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's above and beyond what you would have seen the last 2 years.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay. That legal line is tied in with the other consultants, and I looked at the actual from last year was 281 and change. The budget for this year was 339, and now the budget for next year is 447. Can you go into what's in that budget and why the significant increase is there?
I'm going to have to look.
To 330.
Scott, I don't know if you have that.
Andy, are you referring to the other professional services line?
No, the other consultants. It's 330.
330. Yeah.
Hey, it's Tom. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I apologize for not having a specific response, but I believe we might have put some funding into the 330 that allowed us not to pursue additional full-time or half-time positions in special education. We thought it was less expensive to buy in service than to try to add, say, another OT or PT. That's yes. But I apologize. That's just a broad.
Yeah, in fact, you're right, Tom. That is certainly a part of it. The challenge, Andy, is that 330 line is actually probably made up of about 30 different sublines. So it requires a reasonable amount of analysis to go through it. But it's certainly a very large portion of the increase does come from the special ed area. And Dr. McMorgan is right. It was based on a different approach that we were taking in regards to using outside services this year.
Okay. And then I know you said that you're looking at a reduction in the electric account, which Jeff, you had indicated is partly because the building's closed, but my understanding was that your electric rate with the solar panels is fixed. So that would.
Andy, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
The electric line, you had indicated in the $241,000 cut, there is a reduction in the electric.
Right.
Your electric rate per kilowatt hour, I understood, was fixed because of the solar panels, even though the solar panel charges above current market rate. But the reduction, was it supposedly attributed to the building being closed for the summer?
That is correct.
Rather than a general reduction. Shouldn't, there was a $10,000 increase proposed. And now the reduction offsets that, but the original number looked like it was high.
Yeah, I can address that. So we've been overshooting our electric and gas budgets for several years. And over those years, I've been gradually dialing in the budget to get it closer to what we're actually expending. I think that with this 2021 budget, I would expect those lines to now be in sync. They haven't been, and it's a multi-year process as well, because the lines tend not to travel on a flat line. They're very susceptible to how cold of a winter, how warm of a winter, how humid of a summer. We were heavily hit, not last fall, but the fall before, with extremely tropical weather for a good 3+ months that significantly impacted the running of the air conditioning. So the reason it looks like the budget is going up is that it's catching up to actuals. As regards the solar, you're right. If the solar is generating at a time we consume it, we do consume it straight off. If it's producing at a time we're not consuming it, it rolls our meter back, which is good, and offsets our usage from the pole, so to speak. So we would consume anything in excess of the field or at a time that the field's not generating from United Illuminating. The second phase of that has just come online here in about the last 2 to 3 months in terms of generating. And frankly, I'm waiting to see the effects of that. I've seen variable results there as well. And I just want to see it settle down before I can take any sort of broad assumption on what it's going to really do. I could also speak to the 10% reduction. That was a sort of a high level assumption of we anticipate that we would be closed for some period of time. How long, we don't know. So closed not open in addition to the summertime. So it was an assumption of 10% seems like a reasonable number. We may not be closed during normal session at all. We may be closed for a longer period of time. It's really unknowable. So it was a number as a way to get at that to some degree without really knowing what to bank it on.
And to the point you made about natural gas, you're saying that was severely under budgeted in the past to catch up because the rate for natural gas has basically fallen off a cliff in the last several months, not just since COVID. It's under even more pressure, but it's on futures it's down under $2 per million BTUs now.
Yeah, but gas was a similar story to electric for a multi-year period. The budget was underrunning what the actuals were.
Okay.
Oh, Lindorfer.
Hi, Andy, you're done, are you?
Go for it.
Okay. So, Jeff, I'm sort of surprised actually at the budget that you've come up with, and as artist said some disappointment with some of the reductions you're taking, but I understand that. I understand you're doing it. This, I don't know what the set aside that we're talking about, the 333,000 is. I guess it makes sense. It just seems a little odd, but what it does is it moves that money essentially out of unexpended funds and moves it into a dedicated fund within the school board. So there's no real savings in that, but it does make some sense to have it there, I think, because I just don't know what you guys are going to be doing this coming year, but I don't think anybody knows what the costs that you're going to incur are to try to get kids that are 6 months to a year behind back up to where you'd like them to be. And it's probably a multi-year process, I suppose. So my guess is that a good chunk of that 333,000 is going to go towards whatever changes you have to make. I was interested that you said that you're sort of projecting, I guess, that there's not going to be a media center for a media center specialist to rule over, and that sort of surprised me. I'm wondering what school looks like without a media center in it.
Well, again, this is not about not needing a media specialist. If things were going to go back to normal, like none of this ever happened. But if social distancing is going to be a part of our future, I don't know where we and we have 25 between 22 and 25 kids in a class in Keller. And if you look at the European model, they're saying no more than 12 kids in a classroom. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. But it seems to me like we will need the space that has maybe been used for other things, like the cafeteria, like the media center, like the gymnasium, as places where we can bring students so that they're not sitting on top of one another.
Right. So, okay. Well, I'm going anywhere. I didn't have any specific things. I think you've put together a budget that I think should be accepted, and I hope we go from there.
I have a couple of specific things for you, Jeff.
Okay, fire away.
Just from the central office, and I know you got to go to 3 boards to go through that, but you have 2 payroll clerks right now, and I don't know why you need that. I mean, in total, the payroll clerks are receiving $124,000 a year with benefits in the budget. That's what's budgeted. I mean, I don't know how that compares to either outsourcing the payroll and/or just surviving and doing it with one payroll clerk. I mean, most of it is fixed salaries anyway, right? Salaried employees. So I can't imagine it's all that difficult. Also, there's 3 admins for 3 administrators, the way I'm reading it. And just, I don't know why you can't make do with 2 for the 3 administrators. So just taking those 2 things and taking the human resource manager increase down to 2.5%, like all the other employees in the central office, or most of them, because a couple were at 2%. And adding to that, the mail stipend. I mean, there's a mail run. It's about $10,000. I'm not sure why we're paying somebody $10,000 a year to run mail between the schools. But if you take them out, that's another $100,000 that you can take out. And it doesn't touch anything with the kids. I mean, I'm trying to stay away from that. I think the media specialist is important. I think, extracurricular is important. But I think that we have to look with that and possibly the insurance at trying to increase the amount of savings against the budget. And if you would do that, you wouldn't get down to Paul S.'s number, but you would increase the amount of potential savings to approximately.
I just want to confirm, Greg, your numbers, did that account for the cost sharing with renting or did not?
Yeah. So what I did was I took the full amount for the central office and then took 66.6% plus the meal stipend that's already in the Easton schools per their budget. So yes, it does account for it.
Okay. Jeff, I'd like to hear the answer to his question.
Those numbers don't match my thinking. So rather than be flip, I will say that I will look at that. But how
Forget the numbers for a second. Can you speak to the positions he referenced,
the
which mostly were central office positions?
Well, you have 3 administrative assistants that work for everyone in that office, not just the superintendent, not just the business manager, and not just the assistant superintendent. And they take calls, and they're hardly just administrative assistants to that individual. They're involved with all kinds of data collection, and scheduling, and overseeing a number of activities. I don't know how how people can continue to look at the central office and say that they have all this fat. It's frankly, it's amazing. It's maybe it's the problem of looking at something from 20,000 feet instead of looking at it from being on the ground. I have been involved. I've been in central office probably more than any other board chair, or probably more than any other person that's involved with education. These folks work tremendous hours. They do a heck of a job. And when all the unfunded mandates keep coming down the pike, student privacy. Well, who's going to take care of that? Well, the administrative assistant. That was huge. We need to get permission, or we need to get a letter from every vendor that we do business with, that they are willing to live by the laws of the state of Connecticut. That happened, I think, 2.5 years ago. Who's doing all that work? The administrative assistants. So as work comes down the pike from Hartford, Tom, Scott, and Stephanie can't possibly do it all. So where does it go? It goes to the administrative assistant. Now, as for the 2 payroll clerks, I think I need some help from either Tom, Scott, or probably Vicky to know who does what where. Tom or Scott, can you jump in on that one?
Hey, it's Tom. So let's think we have about 315 certified positions. We have about 200 support staff, and we have about another 250 people that do substitute work or job in for us, or that we purchase services, and that's over 3 districts. So one thing I know, if you're not living with it every day, it's hard to remember. Everything that we do has to be done 3 separate times. So, for instance, we have a massive report that's due to the State Department of Education in August, ED 001, which is touches just about every aspect of the finances that we do. And our accountant has to do that 3 times because of the 3 district structure. In addition to payroll, you're doing a lot of accounting for individual hours of say subs and things like that. But you're also we're also doing certification and insurance, and it really is a full day's work for the human resource manager and the two benefits clerks. We do a lot of cross training so that it's not really what your job title is the work getting done. So I think that you've got a very small footprint at central office, and I don't mind people testing the notion of, is there any extra there? One of the reasons that we put forth the request for the data analyst, which I think we can keep a data analyst full-time busy year round, is we said, okay, let's look at what the receptionist does. And part of what she does is registration of new new students, overseeing people that are seeking either to return from or go to homeschooling, vetting subs. Subs is a huge, huge problem for us. Maybe it won't be in the fall with the new economy, but before March 13th, just getting enough people fingerprinted and background checked to sub is a real challenge, as evidenced by the fact that we have to use the middle school librarian so often to fill in for us. And then if you're not part of the full year conversation about budgeting, I fully understand the question about the human resource manager getting a 4% increase. This person does 100% of the work that's done in most of the districts by a director of human resources who's often supported by multiple people. So the salary that the human resource manager earns is somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 less than people are paying in other districts. And so we are modestly trying to recognize that over time. But I don't think we could be without ERA if we went down to just one payroll clerk, just because of the volume of what needs to be addressed regularly to do it. That's just a workload capacity issue.
Okay, great. That was helpful color. Greg had also asked about the mail stipend.
Yeah, the mail stipend. We actually move quite a lot of paper back and forth among the buildings, and it's either done by a custodian before or after they come on or off shift, or it's done by central office, or it's done by other people. We did look at one point, someone asked us, couldn't you do it all digitally? Couldn't you have a secretary scan it all and send it over? A lot of it can't be done that way because we need the actual documentation, and it's actually a fair amount of mail that moves among the 5 buildings and central office.
Can't the person do it during hours?
Well, then you're taking them from, we looked at that particularly for the high school. Could we take a custodian and have them, get in the car and drive it over? Then we'd be paying mileage for that. And back, the stipend does include the mileage.
Right. So the mileage would be the IRS guidelines for the year.
That's right.
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 But the 10,000 is considerably more than what that mileage has to be.
Yep. I can't speak to the specifics off the top of my head. I do know that for our sense of most of the documents flowing back and forth between us, we need to know that they're securely being moved, and I believe that part of that is part of the custodial contract, although I'm not completely certain about that.
There are courier services that operate locally, not FedEx and UPS. Have you looked at proposals from any delivery services that might be local?
I don't think we have. And remember, that's for the 260 days that we're in session, not 180 days when the kids are with us.
Understand, but not everything is super time sensitive either.
Right.
Similar to that question, have you solicited proposals for handling the payroll by a service like ADP.
Yeah, we have on a couple of occasions priced that out, and it would be about, it wouldn't get you the cost savings you might anticipate, because you need someone on our side to be feeding them the data. So our conclusion was we might as well just do it all ourselves and not have another agency doing it for you.
I think the numbers justify soliciting proposals on those.
What other questions do we have? Jeff, I want to go through sort of where we started the meeting, and just confirm, because Art had made some comments regarding, this is related to the budget and the special fund that you're proposing, and just want to make sure that I'm clear in terms of what we're talking about. So I'm just going to go through some numbers and you correct me to the extent that I am mistaken. So last year, your budget was $16,684,000.
Correct.
This year, pre-COVID, you were requesting $17,391,586.
That sounds familiar.
You, at the start of this meeting, came in and had identified $241,166 in savings that you thought were possible under the circumstances.
Yes.
And you are also proposing a special fund be funded with $333,000. I'm just going to leave it at 333 even for discussion purposes.
For educational purposes, yes.
For educational purposes, 333,000 from your surplus from this year.
That's correct.
Which it's your intent to spend to design your budget.
Yeah.
And so if your budget is as anticipated, you would spend it, correct?
The budget will be based on the 16,684 plus the 333 plus the 132. That would allow us then to plan.
What is the 132?
$132,000 was the 0.08, which is the new money that would be added. But in terms of our budgeting process, we would build a budget based on those three things: the current number of 16, and then add the 333, which is in that special account that you're overseeing, and then the new money, or the fresh money, call it what you will, is 132.
So effectively, your budget proposal is 17,150,420.
That would be what we would spend if we spent 100%.
I got you at 100%.
Hold on, wait. Just wait. Hold on. I just want to confirm. Paul Skirtich, what was the number you just came up with?
$17,150,420 is what Jeff's budget proposal is for the 2021 year.
Okay. Okay, well, that does clarify, actually.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Matt, but I believe that the Board of Ed would need to take an action to adopt that number.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, right. That might happen tomorrow night, but these are numbers that we were gaming out, not
Okay.
adopted numbers.
Well, I just want
as
to
a
make
point
sure
of order.
I understand what the numbers are.
Yep.
I did have a misunderstanding, just in my tracking of what you're talking about. So, okay. So I'm sorry, Mike Cott, I believe I interrupted you.
Has everyone else spoken, Matt?
I think everybody's had an opportunity to speak at least once. Yes.
So, I'm inclined to, based upon the economic conditions and the uncertainty, going forward with a budget of 16,684,000, the same as last year.
Well, then, Michael, you would, in my view, you would devastate the educational opportunity for kids in Easton.
I think devastates
I
a
just
bit.
want to say, I think the Board of Education is being very responsible in thinking about how to use this year's surplus funds that have already been voted on by the town to be dedicated towards education, and thinking about having that buffer, knowing that next year is going to be an interesting year where it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen or how school will have to be managed. Asking for a small increase, a 0.8% increase, which is significantly down in terms of new tax dollars, significantly down for the 4.24%, trying to think strategically about how they're going to use space in the building to make sure all of our kids get a good education, and also trying to reduce the burden to the town to get us close to a 0% increase, and making sure that there's a little bit of a buffer so there's no need to go back to the town with dollars that would just go back into the general fund anyway. So just making sure that those dollars are there in case they're needed. So I think it's irresponsible to think that it's possible to fund next year at the same level as this year. And given that the public comment that we asked the town for, 121 people out of the 140 people or 135 people emailed in to say they support the budget at a much higher increase. So it's, I think, a responsible budget, and appreciate Jeff's work, Tom's work, and the whole Board of Ed's work in trying to do that for the town.
Devin, you didn't make any points similar to that about the other departments. In fact, you were happy to take salary away from people as individuals.
Wasn't happy to take salary away from somebody. I was asking a question because it was not defined as salary in the budget. It was defined as I think a stipend. So I was not happy to take salary away, never happy to take salary away. But nobody on this board has been. We just talked about taking salary away from an HR person, and nobody seemed to defend him. So again, once we found out from the history of that, I wasn't somebody who said that I wouldn't want to take, I don't think taking salary away from anybody is a good idea, but that was not how it was said in the budget, and it probably should be said in the budget. So it's an accurate description and doesn't rely on your historical knowledge going on in the future.
Matt, that's my motion.
You're good. Why don't we start at the other end of the spectrum and allow me to fulfill a campaign promise?
Well, hold on a second. There is a motion on the table, so we can't just ignore it. We have to deal with it. Is there a second?
Wait, Michael, can you withdraw the motion so I can propose something lower first?
This is not a game, guys. It's not a game.
We're not playing a game, Art. The bottom line is,
Well, yeah. It feels like it. It feels like it, Michael.
Yeah, it is.
I made a motion.
It hasn't been seconded.
It hasn't been seconded.
So I mean, I'll second it if I have to, but my preference would be to propose something lower first, and then.
Well, you can second it and then have discussion.
Or Matt, you can set a time limit. If a motion is not seconded within so many seconds, then it is moot and we move on to someone else to make a motion.
Okay,
That's part of the
I
role.
will give 10 seconds for Mike Cott's motion starting now. Okay, motion was not
I have a
seconded.
motion. Mr. Chair. I have a motion. I would move that we fund the Board of Education at the level proposed by the chairman in tonight's meeting. I understand the Board of Ed has not approved that budget yet, right? These are rough numbers still we're dealing with?
That is correct. That'll be a discussion for tomorrow.
All right, but I would propose that we fund it in the manner described, with the increases of $132,000 in new funds, an allocation from the surplus this year of $333,000, and incorporating in it, unfortunately, the $241,166 in cuts that the superintendent has provided, much to my chagrin in some regards, but that would be my motion, that we would approve that.
Can you be a little, not to be a stickler, but can you be?
Yeah, I would.
More specific.
My math indicated it was $17,149,420. I think, based upon.
I think
I think what you have to do is allocate the Board of Education budget and then handle the special account separately. I mean, that would be how I would interpret what they're asking.
Why don't I just approve a budget in that amount, vote for that, and then we can set up the mechanism through the special account. But I don't think I do this. I don't want to. It's my motion. I would like to do it. I'll just add it up. But I believe it's $17,150,420 based upon the chairman's numbers.
That is correct, Art.
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Thanks, Jeff.
This is not a game.
I think Paul's on mute, Paul Lindorfer, if he spoke.
Sorry, folks. Yeah, I was on mute. I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Oh, wait a minute. You're going to ask for discussion?
Discussion, sure. Sorry.
So that the motion is the original request is 17,391 minus 241.
Correct.
$241,166.
Right. So it results in a 2.8% spending increase.
Correct.
Correct.
I can't support that.
No, I'm going to go for something lower as well.
Andy, I'm not sure why you would choose to look at the 333,680, which is money from this year's budget that will not be used, and put under the purview of the Board of Finance, and it's just for educational purposes only. Why you would see that as needing to be part of the discussion about what the increase is?
Because that's what you're asking to have available. And by putting it into that special fund, it means it's not available for any other town purpose. We don't do that with any other department, never have in the 30 years I've been on the board.
Andy, and we've never had it. We've never had a pandemic either.
Yeah.
We're going in. I'm sorry. I guess I'm getting upset. We're going into next year, and we don't know half of what we need to know in order to make all the right decisions. But we're doing it this way to enable ourselves to at least set a course that will allow us to give our kids the best education possible. This is not about 2.8 or 0.8 or anything else, in my view. It's about what do we need to do for the kids and make sure that they are able to catch up the lost time that has been missed and be able to provide them with the education that they deserve.
And I would also point out, we have been very prudent over the years. We have done the best we can over the years. with regard to these budgets, but we are carrying probably an all-time high of unexpended surplus in our budget. What percentage are we at? Is it 14%?
17, I think.
Is it higher than that? What's that number?
Yep,
So-
17%.
That's
And-
going to
and
go
it-
away this
for as
year.
long as I've been on this board, we have said it should be between 8 and 10, perhaps 10 and 11, perhaps 11 and 12, maybe, but we have never carried it. Now, why do we carry it? We carry it for purposes of emergency. We carry it for purposes of avoiding a budget result, which might be catastrophic. And we also do it, well, we don't keep a very high balance because essentially we don't want to overtax the citizens of Easton. Well, why are we considering a budget right now for the Board of Ed? And whether you take the 333 out of a special fund, if that offends people, take it out of surplus. But use the money we have in the manner that we're going to get $600,000 back from Region 9. We're going to get 300 and something thousand back or close to it from the Board of Ed net of this extra money. So we're going to have $1 million returned to us anyway from other sources for this year's budget. So why can't we use the 17% surplus that we have, which is 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times 7% greater than what we're recommended to have in a time when we are critically in need of this kind of, we need to do the best job we can for the taxpayers. That's what we've heard from the beginning of these things, from these meetings. Well, what are we doing for the taxpayer, for their kids? What are we doing for the senior who wants to sell her house and can't sell their house because
Because the
nobody's
tax
going
is
to go
too
to a
high.
school that doesn't run appropriately, all right? And the biggest market for our homes are new families with kids who are going to be directly affected by these cuts that the chairman just said are devastating. We have a big surplus. We don't have to beat education to death in this budget because of a crisis. There are people on this board who think it's their job to keep it flat every year for 10 years or 20 years. They say the same thing. You can't run a flat budget every year. We have the money. We have a surplus. We can do this without damaging education irrevotably. And so this is almost beyond my comprehension why we are taking these hatchets to this budget and to these kids when we don't need to. And we're also making a decision about the Board of Ed without making a decision about our fund surplus and what we're going to do with it. And do we bring it from 17 to 12 or 11 or 10, all of which we could do and still preserve this education budget and still allow a senior to sell their house and still maintain a property value. You're going to save people $150 on taxes, and they're going to carry their houses for 6 months extra of carrying costs of a house that they can't sell because no young families with kids want to move into a place without a librarian or extracurriculars, which we would love to fund. They're not going to this year, but eventually we need to. But you don't do that with a flat budget. And so seniors who need to sell their houses or want to sell their houses, or people want to get 10% more on their house, you're going to save them $100 a month or $100 a year for their taxes. And they're going to carry their houses for another 8 months before they can sell them. It doesn't make any sense to me, ladies and gentlemen. It just doesn't.
Can I ask a
I
technical
don't
question?
think you're going to get any argument from any board member that I'm aware of with respect to using the unassigned fund balance to a much more significant degree than.
So why don't we
We've
consider
talked
how
about
much of
in the
that we
past.
have available to
I
use
mean,
to
we
help
already
educate?
have talked about that in many respects.
So,
Can I ask a technical question, please?
sure.
The 17,150,000, the 333,000 would be in addition, or will we be passing a
That's
lower
included
budget
within that number.
and then also have 333,000?
No, that's included within that number.
Okay, I just wanted, because I don't know this, I didn't read the statute in detail. Thank you.
Yeah, whether we put it into fund balance or
No, I
whether we
agree.
put it into a fund from last year, it's all, as Paul said, and I agree with Paul now.
I agree. Yeah,
It's
I
an
agree.
accounting. It's an accounting thing.
Right.
It's,
No,
but we have it. We have it in surplus. We don't have to.
I get it.
spam the schools this way.
I agree with you. I just want to make sure it's clear. That's the only question I'm saying.
Not in addition.
with
That's the total sum to give halfway decent education for our kids next year. Halfway
I just
decent.
want to make sure everyone understands that. So thank you.
Well, to simplify the conversation a little bit to the extent we can, I would be in favor of eliminating the discussion about the special fund. And whatever we decide with respect to their budget, just have it be the line item for their budget and be fully transparent in every respect with respect to what that number is. Does anybody, so that we can advance the discussion on the more substantive areas, does anybody disagree or have a problem with doing that?
I agree that the discussion about the 333 is kind of a moot point because we're going to do it anyway. We're doing it either by doing this 333 thing or increasing the amount of surplus appropriated to the budget. They both accomplish the same thing. One of them gives the Board of Finance maybe a little bit more control over the Board of Ed budget, which, I mean, okay, fine. That's the corollary of it. I don't know that we necessarily need that. I think we can move on with the discussion without the discussion of the 333. I'm okay with that.
Does anybody have a dissent to what I've just suggested?
Well, just one more comment. I think it is different with the 333,000 on the Board of Ed's budget with a separate line item. It's different than having that 333,000 in undesignated funds, which would have to, if they wanted to be used, would have to go to a town meeting to get them used. So I think it's.
Well, no, I'm suggesting that whatever we vote on for their budget, it includes any money that we would have put in that special fund. So I'm not saying, for sake of discussion, I'm not suggesting if Art said 17,154,20.
He has the 333 in there.
In there, that's right.
Right.
And I'm just saying,
Not in a special.
Correct.
let's not complicate I don't see the advantage of the 333 in a separate account. I'm not sure that I'm hearing anybody else really expressing a value to it either. Confusing the issue. I'm suggesting we just eliminate it from the discussion and just talk about what the total number is.
I don't know whether it makes a difference in how we tax it or how we account for it or whatever, but essentially, I think it's important to point out that $333,000 of that is not new money that we are taxing the citizens of Easton for in order to pay for education. It is old money that was not spent and is either going to roll over in a surplus from last year, or it's going to be allocated from this year in a special fund. But this is not, we don't have to go out and raise $17,150,000 for this school budget. We're going to raise $333,000 less than that for the school budget.
I would just add that we would not be the only town to be doing that. It would be consistent with what neighboring towns are also doing, which is keeping the budget what it is.
Are we going to put $600,000 into a special fund for the rest of the town that's returning that amount of money? I don't understand what the advantage of that is and why we're doing it differently here. Why don't we just vote on the amount of money for your budget?
Matt, why would you tax the 333,680 twice?
We don't necessarily have to tax it. We can use money from surplus.
So what you're saying is turn back the 300,000. So next year, if we were going to say 3 million from unassigned, we'll do 3.3 million. That's where the 300 is accounted for. We're not taxing anyone twice. We're just increasing whatever they turn back is what we're increasing or we're offsetting next year's mill rate by. Instead of keeping it in the Board of Ed budget, we are putting it in the undesignated fund against the mill rate for next year.
And giving it back to the people who've already paid it.
Correct.
Or
it's just classified in the revenue side.
It didn't occur.
It's being classified in the revenue side as opposed to the expense side. So your budget's the budget and turning back the money and then giving it back in next year's budget in the unassigned, increasing how much we're going to allocate by the money that's being returned.
Whichever way gets us to Grandma's house, I'm
just trying to simplify how we get there.
The motion on the floor, Matt, is for the 2.8% increase. It's the original request minus 241.
So it was seconded. Well, we're in discussion. Are you ready to take a vote or?
When we do vote, I'm gonna vote no to get something less than this. And then after that, I'm going to
All
propose.
right, well, why don't we take a vote?
Yeah.
So the motion is Art Lasky's motion for 17,150,420. Seconded by Paul Lindorfer. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Hey.
No.
Okay. I'm a no.
Okay, so I'll make a motion, which may or may not get seconded. And Matt, you can give us a 10-second limit. I'll propose that we make the budget 15,684,000, which is 1 million less than last year.
Is there a second?
Maybe cut the time to 7 seconds.
All right, there's no second.
Right.
Okay, so going back to what I had suggested, do we have a consensus that we can just vote on the budget as a line item and not?
I think that's the only responsible approach to take. We designating a portion of the surplus to a particular purpose, to me, is not just not proper and prudent finances. Okay. And you know, when a crisis occurs, we've had 2 instances in the last several years when the health insurance reserve really got blown up at the Board of Ed. And when that happened, the board came to the Board of Finance, and the Board of Finance supported a special appropriation to cover it, and the town meeting supported the additional expenditure at that time. And I think when there is a major issue like that, people do come together. As far as this budget, to me, obviously I would take the budget down to 241,166. But in addition to that, I've spent many hours again looking through the literature on class size and impacts of class size. And I think there are amounts, small amounts in various budgets that haven't been accounted for. I think we would still stay within most Durgay school systems guidelines, even if we reduced classroom teachers by 3 in Staples. But I would back that off to 2, which is roughly $100,000 each when you factor in benefits, the whole package. Also, in past years, the practice of the Board of Ed for some time has been to budget expecting that they've got a little bit of leeway in what they actually expect to spend, a couple percent, which is a considerable amount of money. But I didn't add up the total yet, but I'm sure Paul has it in hand. In addition to the 241,166, I would take out another 200,000.
I think all that adds up to 466,420.
Yep, and it's a 1.6% increase.
And then you end up last year's number.
So what's the total number for the budget then?
I was
16,950,420.
Wait a minute.
So have you guys considered the reality of what our kids are going to face when they go back to school? Because we're so worried about the extra $100 a year that this is going to cost the town, that nobody's thinking about the 835 kids that we serve in this town and the needs that they will have when we go back to school. They've been out of school for 6 months. They have faced unprecedented trauma. They have most likely lost at least 6 months of education that they now need to catch up from. They need counseling, psychological support, not to mention that the families in this town, 60% of this town, needs childcare. Many of them will need free and reduced lunch services, family counseling, and psychological support. And so the answer is not cutting teachers cutting staff. It's making sure that we are funding our school and funding the service. This is the most important social service that we have in our town as we try to recover from a pandemic. You guys talk about job losses and the challenges that our economy are going to face. If we do not have a school system that can support our families, we are handicapping them from recovering. This makes no sense whatsoever. You're actually doing the opposite of what you think you're doing. You are hurting people more than you're helping them.
I would just like to add on to Devin before it gets too late. I do see a number of the students on the Zoom call. I want to say thank you. As kids, you shouldn't have to be worried about this, and I'm sorry that you do have to be. And to the extent that this has become somewhat of a laughing matter or a game of how low can we get this budget, and certain members are smirking and laughing. I don't have a vote, but I have a voice, and I want to apologize to you because I understand that it's your future. And I'm very disappointed in the lack of regard for our kids right now.
I think, Matt, the number that would be in the motion I made is 16,835,166. Does that match what you have, Paul Skirtich?
I didn't. Can you tell me the individual pieces again?
Oh, it's reducing the initial request, the 17,391,586 being reduced by 441,166.
I have that as 16,950,420.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I picked up a wrong number here.
$141,166.
441,166. No, that's 16,950,420.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to be clear, Andy, what you are suggesting, your motion is the starting value of 17,391,586 minus 241,166.
And another 200.
Plus another 200, which gets to 16,950,420.
Right. That's a 1.6% increase, which I think is bigger than any other function in town government.
I just have to add, I can't vote for a budget that's going to drop two teachers out of the system. I can't do that.
Is there a second?
I'm inclined to have a number even less than that. So if this does not pass, are we going higher or lower?
I'm inclined to have it less.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'm not.
Wait, you want me to second it? You want me to second your motion so Mike Cott and Paul doesn't have? No. Listen, this is a game you guys are playing.
There's
you want
no
me to
game.
Andy's gonna put up his number and I have to second
There's
it.
just
Otherwise, we
not-
have to deal with these guys. No,
What's that?
it's a Republican proposal. If you want to do it, second it. If not, all these cuts, you guys own them, and there's no vote this year, so you can take advantage of it. So why don't it's unconscionable.
Okay, I'm inclined to go with what Michael Cott suggested the first time. And Mike, if you want to propose that again.
Wait a minute, we still have discussion going on here. And I just
So there is a motion. There's no second. It's going to expire in about 5 seconds.
Okay, so
You have the ability to second, Matt, as well, and
I'll
make
second.
motions.
I second.
okay, so we're up for discussion.
Now we're
discussion.
I think this is not a budget that I think would pass if it went to a vote, and we are the vote. So I think it's our responsibility to pass a budget that we think the town would vote.
Why do you say that, Paul?
Why do I say that?
Yeah, just provide some color.
I don't understand the question. This is a unique situation where the people of the town don't get to vote on their budget for the school system. And we are representing them for this vote. So I don't believe this is a vote. If this vote went to the public, that this would pass. That's my personal opinion, and everybody else can have theirs. But if we dive deeper than this. We're going more and more into the world of a budget that would not pass a vote. And I think that's us not doing our job if we do that.
Paul, I have to disagree with you, and I have to go back a few months in history. If you recall last November, when the economy was booming and people weren't under the kind of financial stress that they are today, there was an election campaign, and candidates based their entire campaign working very, very hard in a very well organized campaign, which was centered totally around increasing spending for education. And those candidates lost. That was a referendum on increased education spending. I think
That's not a referendum on increased education spending.
Would
It was a
Dr.
vote
Bindeglass like to comment
went
on
across-
that? Dr. Bindeglass, would you like to comment on that?
That makes no sense. That makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense.
How many votes did you get, Devin?
I didn't win, but that doesn't mean that you guys get to slash the education budget. That wasn't the vote. The vote was, that's silly.
Look,
this is not a game. This is children's
and-
lives that you are playing with.
If you want to talk politics,
This is ridiculous.
Andy,
This is not a game.
Andy, if you want to talk politics, we have
Nobody's playing games here, so I would appreciate it if everybody refrained from pointing fingers at each other. This is not a game. Nobody is taking it as a game. There is disagreement among this board, as there should be, and I expect all of you to be respectful to each other and not impugn everybody's integrity. Okay? This is a discussion and there's disagreement, and that's what it is. I have kids in the school system too.
I never said you didn't, but here's the deal. Being told that the reason I lost and the reason Tara lost was because we put our education as part of the responsibility of the town. We lost because we didn't get as many votes. That doesn't mean that we should be slashing the education budget by $1 million or $500,000. We should all be working together to make the best decision for our kids. That's why we're all here. And I think we can come and do that together. But to come at this as Republican versus Democrat or saying that last November was a referendum to cut the budget is not okay.
For the kids, we have to make a balanced decision that represents all of the 7,500 people in this town, not just the ones that go to the school system. Okay, that is what we're trying to balance. I understand.
Well, and I think that's what the Board of Ed is trying to do.
Priorities are, and that's why we have an open discussion. And I want you all to voice your opinions and make your case as strong as you can. And I think that's very important to our process. And sometimes it might be messy.
Well, I don't, when I'm making my points, Matt, or anybody else, I am not talking about people who have kids in school solely. I've got one left in this school system who's in high school, but I've had all four of mine go through, okay? I've seen the changes in the level of attention, support, and activities available to my last child compared to my first and second and third. That's a big difference. And I don't think my fourth should be suffering any more than anybody who moves into this town should be suffering as far as the quality of their education goes. Now, I'm not speaking for the people who have kids in school. I'm speaking for the seniors who live on my street, or me in a number of years when I want to sell my house. And you know what? It's 85 days on average to sell a house in Easton, if not longer. And the price of property in Easton has gone down under the scheme that we have concocted over the last bunch of years to constantly cut education. We have not rebounded with our house values the way other towns have. And the world knows that Easton doesn't have a librarian or doesn't have extracurriculars. I'll go to Westport. I'll pay more in Fairfield. I'll get half the house in Fairfield and pay more for it than get a larger house on a nicer spot in a wonderful town. Because the only thing we have to sell in this town, other than fresh air and nice trees and a couple of reservoirs and some farms, is our educational system. So, yeah, taxes are high. Don't blame the education system for that. Blame the fact that our grand list is the same right now as it was in dollar value in 2005. We don't have anybody else to tax. Our grand list now is a little over $1.3 million. It was that in 2005. even with the revals. So we're squeezing education, we're squeezing everybody else because we think that's the way we're going to get out of this. Well, who's going to buy our houses? People with kids who want to go to a good school. And when Jeff Parker says you're going to devastate this, and then you get a counter motion for $1 million more, what are we listening to? And who are we listening to? I respect the people on this board. I've been on it a long time. But it's not just the COVID crisis that brings people to their senses and says, gosh, now we need to go flat, or worse, we need to go negative. We need to cut money out from last year. We need to spend less. People say that every year. There's been people on the board every year who said that. Not on my side of the table, but on the other side. And we fought to keep what we can. But I'm not saying you're taking advantage of COVID to cut the budget even deeper. All I'm saying is every year you want to do this. A member just said, my job is to make sure we keep it flat like we did last year, regardless of the circumstances or less. Well, the time comes to pay the piper. It was last year and the year before when we didn't fund it, media specialists, and we lost those extra people. You're going to cut $200,000 more and knock some more teachers off? Really? I mean, there's a bigger picture to this town, and we need to have this town be healthy. And to be healthy, we need new life and new people buying houses at good values so seniors can sell them and put their life savings away and move on if they want to, or they can have it at the end. And we're saving people $100, $150 a year in taxes. That's it. That's what we're talking about between these numbers on an average house. A couple $100. Now, we have tax relief for seniors. We can help them out. If people can't pay their taxes, we don't have to throw them out. We can enter an agreement. When they sell it, we'll get the money back with interest. We're not going to throw people out who are seniors. We have a huge surplus. We have a 17% surplus. We can't use that for education. We have to cut like this.
Art, it never ends. It never ends. And the revenue.
I'm almost done, Mike, and then we can hear from you. I am disgusted by this, and I've been on this many times, and I have said many times, this is beyond my comprehension that we're going to do this. We don't have to do this. I think some people want to do it.
It was you last year who made the comment to the Board of Education in this exact meeting last year that the rate of spending increases that they have experienced was unsustainable. That was you that said that.
Yeah, and you know what? It isn't because the Board of Ed spending is unsustainable.
When the time came.
No. The larger context of my comments is exactly what I said tonight. Our town doesn't have a growing grand list. We have less and less money every year to spend. So unless something changes, and it hasn't in the last 15 or 20 years, because that hasn't been the direction we've taken, the bullet you got to bite is you either agree that this place is going to be bucolic and green and open and schools and churches, and that's it. And when the time comes, you got to bite the bullet and have a higher mill rate because you're paying for this enjoyment. But you can't have it both ways, you guys. You can't say we're going to slash everything down because we won't want to have a tax base grow. We're stuck in this position. When I said it was unsustainable, it's because you look at the grand list, it is. It's unsustainable if we're going to try and cut taxes every year because you can't. Not when your mill rate goes, not when your grand list doesn't grow. So yeah, I've tried to be realistic. These guys are cutting more in the Board of Ed than I would want them to. But they came to us with $241,000 you didn't have to work for. That's a big thing. But, it's never enough.
I think it's also important
to
to
give people a couple $100 and doing what? Laying off teachers and putting the Board of Ed into this position. It's once we go forward, once we go backwards like this, you don't go forwards, folks. We only keep going backwards. Next year's schools will be just worse.
Okay, who else?
I just wanted to add that, the time for public comment was post-COVID or at least during it. So the overwhelming majority of what we heard was residents supporting the budget as proposed weeks ago at 4%. And, to be so focused on votes, I think we should also be focused on what people have communicated in the past month in this crisis, in this scenario, with the budget as proposed a month ago. We have a responsibility to reflect what is being voiced. Well, we heard from 130 some odd people, and 121 of them supported a budget increase at 4%.
Okay, well, that's 1.6% of the population. Are we going to make a decision based solely on that?
We can continue irreconcilable philosophical discussions, but if we don't reach a situation where we can get 4 yes votes for some number, then the budget ends up being zero, or last year's budget temporarily. So I would say to Mike and Paul Skirtich, I've gone as low as I'm willing to go. You can, if this motion doesn't pass, you can make more motions for numbers significantly lower than that. But you're not going to get 4 yes votes. I'm sure you're not going to get a yes vote from Paul Lindorf or Lasky. You won't get it from me, so it won't pass. So you better come up with a number that will pass and gain at least 4 votes somehow.
Okay. Well, all right. So
can I ask Matt, why are we voting tonight on a number?
Yeah.
You have a meeting on Thursday.
If we have agreement on a number, then there's no reason not to vote.
Well, the Board of Ed hasn't finalized even what they're recommending to you yet, correct?
Correct.
So why you had planned to meet on Thursday? Why are we deciding on a number now? I'm just curious. It seems out of order from what I thought our plan was.
Well, I don't know whose plan it was.
Well, you planned a meeting for Thursday.
I don't mind
next Tuesday, correct?
I don't mind figuring out a number today. So, Michael, I think you have support for the 16,684. Matt, I don't know if you do, but Andy, would you do 16,684, which is exactly the same as last year?
No. I just said 16,954.20 is as low as I'll go.
But Paul, if we don't vote on it tonight and we just adopt last year's budget, same number.
Well, that's a temporary. We can't.
No, I don't think
we can't pass a budget for the entire town. If we don't reach a vote on all of the departments and say we can't agree on any number for the Board of Ed, then we don't have a budget, and therefore all departments.
Okay, Andy, then this is what I suggest. I suggest we wait till Jeff talks to the union, see what he comes up with. Doesn't make any sense to make a decision tonight then.
I'm ready to make a decision tonight.
Yeah, you are, but here's the thing. No one's going to agree on the same budget as last year. So let's see what Jeff's got to talk to the union. Let's see what if any concessions can come up.
Okay, well that's not going to change on Thursday.
Jeff, when are you talking to the union?
Unless, Jeff, you think it might change by Thursday.
No, I don't. The way I left it with the union was that I gave them the schedule for what this week was going to look like. Board of Finance tonight, Board of Ed on Tuesday, Board of Finance on Thursday. And depending on what transpired, that I would get back to them either on the Friday the 15th or Monday the 18th, and we would set a course from there.
Okay, I mean, you started off by saying you don't think that it would change from where we are.
Why, without having a number to work to, what do you think are the odds that the union is going to come forward with reductions?
Why do I think?
I don't know of any union that would say, "Oh, we don't know what they're really going to do, but we'll throw this into the pot."
Of course.
I mean, that's just not how negotiations work.
Exactly.
I think delaying a vote just means there will be additional animosity.
I don't know. I don't think we need to delay anything. Wait, what do we need? So we got Andy. Michael, would you vote for Andy's number?
Andy, your number's too low. 200,000 additional is at best arbitrary, and it's not based on what you would be doing to kids. I know. I mean, I know you don't. I know you don't want to hurt the kids, but this decision will.
Andy, can you just go through your 200 again?
We could reduce the number of sections and staples, 3 different sections, and still stay within class size guidelines that are acceptable in other Durgay towns. Rather than go to 3, just 2. We'd have classes, instead of being 17, they'd be 21 or 22.
I mean,
Andy,
26 and 28.
Andy, your math is incorrect.
Here's the thing, Danny. Here's the thing. People, we got to look at this reality. People are losing their jobs. Probably 20% of the Americans out there. There's going to be a lot of people. We have revenue issues to consider here. And what are we doing? We're saying, give the teachers the raise. Give the administrators the raise. What are we doing to the town employees? Take the money back. Don't give them a raise. So what I say is, if you're a salaried position within the school system, you don't get a raise. Period. End of story. And you got to get a concession from the teachers.
Jeff, if you would, you obviously disagree with Andy's math.
Andy, yes, Andy is
sure
saying,
if he's incorrect, he would appreciate some feedback. But
okay,
so I'll give you the opportunity to.
The people that we have teachers who range in age from 25 to 75. The people that would get cut are the younger people, 23, 24, 25, 26. Their salary is in the 55 to 60 range, and if they are the right age, they're still on their parents' health plan. So when you cut a teacher who is relatively new in the district, you're talking about a somewhere between 60,000 and maybe 65,000 if they happen to be a single person on our health plan. Your number of 100,000 is completely inaccurate.
How much is
so just to be
I want to
clear,
know. Hey Matt, I want to know, how much are the raises this year? What does that equate to across the board for all the employees?
Are you talking about the school system?
Oh yeah.
Let's see. The paraprofessionals are 2.25%.
What's the dollar number, Jeff? The dollar.
The total increase in terms of dollars year over year. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Is 293.
So there's 300,000 right there.
Mm-hmm. What do you think we're going to give away that's going to give us $300,000 one-trip pony? We're not going to get it because I've got a winning smile and a snappy personality. It's part of negotiation, and we're going to have to come up with something that is important to them. In any contract negotiation that I've been involved with, and I've been involved with them all, the other big thing is healthcare, and who contributes what percent, and what kind of healthcare can they get, and those things are not inexpensive. So you think you get $300,000 or 290 or whatever it is, you get it less the give back that you had to give.
On this point, I totally agree with Jeff. He's absolutely right. The best that you could hope for is that you get some sort of deferral,
right?
But you'll never get a deferral that is a complete wash. You're going to pay down the road something extra to get that. So, Mike, I don't think you've heard any possibility that any of the numbers that you proposed will get support from a majority of the board.
Let me ask this question to Andy and Jeff. So Jeff, if I hear your comments, Andy is proposing an additional $200,000. You're disagreeing with how he comes up with that math, and you're basically saying that that number, if you were to reduce two sections, would be closer to $120,000.
That is correct.
And Andy, just to finalize this part of the discussion, did your 200 include other numbers, or was that basically the two sections?
You could go through and pick up 2,000 here and 5,000 there and get to it. I still think there's room in the natural gas account based on what the actual spending has been for the last couple of years. I still think there's more in the substitutes accounts based on the historical patterns, not the current quarter. But the details of each individual account obviously is up to the Board of Ed. And that if there are paras that are in the classrooms, if a teacher is cut, presumably if you eliminate a section, there may be paras involved as well. But again, we've got to get to a number that protects the people's ability to stay in their house, never mind worrying about who might want to buy a house down the road. And this is a lot of districts are dealing with zero increases in their education budgets. This is a 1.6% increase.
Andy, which district has a zero increase? I don't know any.
Well, there are a lot who haven't finalized yet, but in fact, none of them have finalized yet. But
of course, yeah, that's correct.
For final.
So the statement doesn't hold water.
But there are a lot. Yeah, I heard a lot. I mean, if we were able to come up with a solution, fully fund Jeff's budget the way he wants, deal with the town side, take the unrestricted funds, apply them appropriately, and come up with as close to a flat budget as we can, would you guys be on board with that?
Okay, so here's what happens. If we do this, if we go with Andy's budget,
that's the question.
I'm going to tell you the implications of what happens if you do that.
Or your question was if you could fund it through.
If we could fund Jeff's budget at his level, if we could deal with the rest of the town expenses as we think fit, and we could come up with a final number on the mill rate and on the growth rate so that it is flat or just a little bit above or close to it or whatever, very close to flat, would you guys be on board with that? And fund Jeff's education and come up with a flat increase? Would you do
that? For me, the answer is yes, except that to go with, oh yeah, hold on, I had this in here the first time. To do that, it's a decrease of 241,166, which is what Jeff suggested. Then we've got to take, let's say, I bring the collection rate back up to 97.4%. That means we have to take $3 million out of the surplus fund.
Let's say we did that. That would bring our percentage of the budget on the surplus. We would go from 17% to what? 14? 13%?
No.
What would it go to?
8, I think.
No, it wouldn't, because we have the $1 million coming from the Board of Ed and Region 9. You got to throw that back in, right?
Okay, so let's figure that out.
Plus the town's also turning it back.
My calculation has it at 12%.
So you have to add the town's money coming back. Region 9 is going to give us 500,000 or so, they've indicated, in a minimum. The Board of Ed, if we didn't credit them with the 333, is going to give us back around 6.
Well,
So
no,
add the 6.
between 4 and 6.
Well, he just said it's 300 now, almost 300 if he kept the 333. I heard him say it was almost 6.
He
So
said between 4 and 6.
let's say it's 5. Let's say it's
That
5, Andy,
that
because
is
I
what I
like to
said.
find the middle ground too. So 500 from them, 500 from Region 9, money back from the town. So when we take the money out of the surplus that we have in the budget, we're going to be putting money back in. So you need to count all that and see how it balances out. I believe we could fully fund the education budget and deal with the cuts on the town side and take what we need in this time of crisis from our crisis stockpile of money, which is sitting there, which you've already taxed people for, and we could get ourselves a budget that doesn't knock the bejesus out of the Board of Ed or anybody else on the town side. I bet we could.
I mean, to do that would require a withdrawal from the unassigned surplus in the neighborhood of $3 million.
Of how much?
Neighborhood of-
In the
How much?
neighborhood of $3 million.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
But we
So
get
we've done 2
1.6
before.
back.
We've done 2 before, and we're getting a mill back. So I mean, we have that. It's the same budget
Andy,
that we do all
Andy,
the time.
what's your number, Andy?
950,420.
I'd go with 16,900,000.
All right, fine.
I told you what my limit was, Mike.
Yeah, Andy has
50, yeah, Andy,
And
Andy, Greg went through,
that's what I do.
I know, but Greg went through the cuts that they could do in the central office, the payroll clerk, the admin. There's money there that you don't touch anything on the education side with the people actually teach the students.
All right, sure. Guys, I appreciate the interest in another motion, but I think Matt seconded Andy's motion, so my understanding is that motion is pending.
Yeah, I mean, you can vote no on it, Mike, but I don't know what number you're going to get that's any closer to your desire. Maybe, unlike some people, when I say that's my limit, I stick to it.
I'm going over my limit.
My limit was 15,684. We're way over that one. All right. So we're at,
There's votes for that.
okay. So we're at, the decrease would be 441,166. That would mean, I mean, look, Andy, Matt, and well, all the members of the board, do you guys have any issue with taking a number in that magnitude out of the excess surplus, like 3 million? Anybody have an issue with that?
I don't have an issue with it because it's going to net out about 2 million, which is what we've done before.
And this is significantly larger, yeah. So and we got a whole bunch coming back. I recognize that.
Right. So we've done 2, and we're going to have 3 because we're getting $1 million back from and the money we're getting back is education money, folks. It's Region 9, and our Board of Ed is giving us $1 million back, and we're cutting their education budget. So yes, I would fund that amount. I would fund that amount out of the surplus.
So what you're saying, Art, is that we overfunded the Board of Ed, 2 boards of ed by a total of $1 million last year.
Well, what I think we've learned, if people were listening, is the surplus that they are giving us back is larger this year because some of their expenses have been less because of this semester and COVID. It went from 300 to maybe 600. Plus the health insurance costs are down. There's a lot of different factors. So we didn't overfund them. These people are running a good operation. They shouldn't be punished. Did we overfund Ed because he gave us money back? No. We gave him a responsible amount and he did what he could with it. That's just what the Board of Ed does.
Okay,
I
wait.
think by the calculation, it's about 1.6 million that we think is coming back. So even if we spent 3, it would be basically a net 1.4. And last year we spent 2 and we got 2.2 back. Right. So there's like precedent for spending in the millions to flatten the budget. This isn't out of question.
Okay. So in terms of trying to get this done,
Just remember, well, I am in favor of hitting the unassigned fund balance. Relying on that exclusively is only going to push this problem into next year. So some way we need to have a balance between how we change the overall budget to the town and what we take out of the unassigned fund balance, which I would encourage us to. That's why it's there. This is the time when we need it, and we should use it.
Yeah.
But if we do not find savings in the overall budget, then we're just going to be facing this problem next year. And at this point, there's no indication that next year is going to be any better than this year. In fact, it might even be worse. So I don't think we can just rely exclusively on the unassigned fund balance to get us to where we need to go.
I think we're not, in prolonging the discussion, we're not gaining any new information. So I would suggest that you call for a vote.
I agree. I think, yeah.
All right. So the motion on the table is for
Appropriate $16,950,420 to the Easton Board of Education budget.
And that's exactly 200,000 less than what Jeff suggested, right?
Correct.
Correct.
All right.
So it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, no, I'm Paul Skirtich, Mike Cott, and Andy. I assume you're voting for your own motion.
I said aye.
Okay. I am not voting for it.
You want to go higher or lower?
I want to go slightly higher.
Oh.
What I want is based on the number. So starting with the 17,391,586 Board of Education number of 241,166 that they have come to the meeting with.
Yep.
I do think the 200 is higher than I think it should be. I would recommend a additional 135,000 for 17,015,420.
Okay, fine.
That is my motion.
Second.
Well, wait a minute, we haven't, did we finish up the vote from the last motion?
Yeah, you didn't.
I voted no. It was a tie.
Well, you're assuming the votes of Art and Paul. You do need to record.
No, they voted.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Paul Lindorfer and Art Lasky.
I think it's a safe assumption they're voting no.
You're right. I presume they're no vote, but we will explicitly ask them to register a vote on the prior motion from Andy Ketchel.
All right, yes, I'm a no vote.
I'm also a no vote.
Okay.
And
I've made a motion for $17,015,420. Is there a second?
Yep, second.
Matt, say it again. I need to get this down, Matt. Tell me again what the number is. 17 million?
17,015,420.
So that's 65,000 more than my motion.
Correct.
Correct.
But it is, let's see.
2% rate increase. Or 2%.
It's 2%, correct. 1.99.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, sure. Discussion.
It's your motion. Go ahead and start talking.
Do we have a second to the motion?
Yep.
There was a second from Paul Skirtich.
All right.
I know nothing bad.
We need it.
Want discussion, Art? Now's the time to speak up.
Well, it is, how much is that less than what Jeff was asking for?
135.
135?
Yes.
I can if you can, Art. Now the pressure's on.
Well, I will add to the discussion. In my numbers that I've gone through of the budget, I do believe that there is a number of areas in the budget, including several areas of partial increases to positions. So just essentially maintaining current levels, but not increasing positions from their current level, that more than provides the amount of money that I identified.
Jeff, I'd ask you, what would that do to your budget?
Well, another 135 off. We're entering into the deep end of the pool. We will have the board will have decisions to make about things like discrete math and Spanish at the elementary level. I need to get, let's see, probably need to take out 3 people. It's not good, but it's
Well, that would do it. But what other way is there?
I'm sorry, Paul.
What other way is there not looking at taking people out?
Well, that's just it. You have fixed costs and you have variable costs. We've gone through the variable cost. We're now into cutting people. When you think about it, the education budget, 82% is personnel salaries and benefits. We got it. It got cut too deep last year, and this is just more of the same.
And Matt, I think I'm not going to vote for this. I think what's going to happen is we're going to come to this next year, and you're going to hear a lot worse than what you're hearing this year. But that's only me.
Well, Mike, I think there's a theme in my 6 or 7 years of doing this, and I'm pretty clear where you stand on education in general.
It has nothing to do with that. That's wrong, Jeff.
Well,
That's nothing. I look for efficiencies, and I never see the school become efficient.
Well, Mike,
I see, if you look at the school numbers of the students and how they've declined and how spending continues to increase over the last dozen years, there are plenty of charts out there that show it.
Well, Mike, you know what? You are welcome, as I have reached out to you before, to come to a Board of Ed meeting.
I've been there, Jeff.
We don't, not this year, my friend. One time.
I think twice last year.
Okay, well, let's stay on topic here. So if you guys have something to contribute to.
Michael, here's the problem. I don't think that we get to a number any less than what Matt just proposed.
Well, that's because I understand why. I totally get it. But I think I think we just take a vote.
Mike, I think I'm in a different place than you in that I'm prepared to deal with next year and the consequences of the economic activity that are largely unknown. I'm prepared to deal with some of that next year. I don't think we need to deal with it all this year because we don't know what it all is.
Can I just point out one thing?
Sure.
May I?
Absolutely.
The only thing I would
Go ahead,
quickly
Doctor.
offer is that at least next year, I think it's a pretty fair assumption that the people will get to vote on next year's budget. And I think that's significant if we get ourselves to next year.
Well, I am totally comfortable with the 2% increase to the Board of Education budget being something that can be supported by the town and something that the Board of Education can manage under the circumstances that we find ourselves in. I understand that it's not necessarily going to be easy, but I'm pretty certain there's a much harder challenge for most of the residents of this town ahead of them than what the Board of Education is being asked. So I am comfortable with the number that I've provided and supporting it. And I'm comfortable that the Board of Education will find a way to make it work. And I've gone through the numbers enough to see several paths for them to get there. And they have that flexibility to do it. So that's where my head is at.
All right.
Mike, would you feel that you were still making your point if you simply abstained in this vote?
I don't know, take a vote, see what happens.
Okay, well, there's a vote and a motion.
Well,
So,
let me put in my 2 cents just to.
I want to hear Paul too. Yeah, keep going.
All right. So, the way I view this, we are forcing Hobson's choices here where we don't need to. I think we can, in fact, fund this in an appropriate level where we don't have to do devastation, and we are not. I think that we're making a final judgment on a Board of Ed number without knowing what we're going to do with the surplus and how much we can apply, and without appreciating the fact that we're getting $1 million back in education dollars that we are not putting back towards the education structure that needs it. So I am not happy with the fact that we started out with cuts that I didn't like, and I'm not happy with the fact that we have cuts now that I don't like. I appreciate Andy's offer to say that he would support it if I would. And up until just a moment or two ago, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But then Dr. Bindleglass did mention that, unfortunately, we don't get the right or the ability to have the people vote on this budget this year. I think the budget needs to be higher. I think that everybody in the town, whether it's a senior or a newcomer or somebody who wants to be here, would support that kind of a budget where our educators, our professionals are telling us it's what they need. But I'm also afraid that if we continue this process, it's going to devolve into more of a who can cut what, regardless of the justification and who's got the votes and who's mad. And I don't think that's how you can make good public policy. So I thank the chair for upping the number. I wish it were higher. I don't know that it would get any higher. And my job is to make it as high as it can go if I can, and then make a decision as to whether I walk away or whether I join in. So I think this is not a good budget. I am only voting for it, and I am voting for it at this number because I want to stop this carnage. And I want to make sure that people remember when they do have the right to vote, the better course was not taken this year and why. So I will vote to support this budget. I thank Andy for his offer to extend that. I thank Matt for his motion, and my vote will be yes.
Well, it's a disappointing vote. I can't believe that $135,000 is going to be 3 teachers. That's just, anyway, I think this is the best we're going to get tonight. I don't see anything coming any better. So I'll be voting yes for it also.
Paul Skirtich.
So call for the vote, Matt.
Well, we're taking the vote. I'm sorry. We have two. That's what I'm in the process of
You
doing.
didn't ask. All in favor, say aye.
Yeah, all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? One.
The motion carries.
Motion carries.
Do we have anybody? I'm sorry, I got to get this down. Did we have anybody opposing?
There was one, Mike.
Right here, Paul, right here.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Matt, before we adjourn for our meeting Thursday, if you could add to the agenda, discuss and act upon choice of an auditor for the next year. That subcommittee has met and reached consensus, so we should act on that, but it needs to be on the agenda.
Okay. I'll make it happen. Okay, are there any other budget discussions, or are we going to get a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
In the next
Second.
hold on.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
There's one nay.
Just having so much fun. Or what?
No, I wanted to say something.
The motion, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say in the next version of the master budget list that Christine you send out, can you change the collection rate to 97.4 and a surplus appropriation to finance a budget to 3 million?
You could change that collection rate to anything you want.
Oh, I know, but it depends on what the mill rate's going to be.
Well, you are free to change that for your own purposes all you want. Ultimately, we'll all have to decide on what number we're going to use as an assumption. The number that we discussed and had a set at the board was 97.
I don't know about that, but you know what I would ask?
The meeting
you know what I would ask if we could? I tried to download or get access to the annual reports online on our website.
They're on the website.
What's that?
They are on the website.
I know, but you can't download them. They take forever. Yeah, they wouldn't download. I couldn't get any of them downloaded.
I can send you the PDF.
Yeah, I don't need the whole PDF. It would be helpful if you would pull for me, or you can send it to me offline if you want. I'd like to know what happened to the collection rate in the time period 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
I can do that for you. I have that info.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
We're already adjourned. Meeting's over. You can go, Matt.
All right, you can talk about me behind my back now.
Thursday.
Send that to me as well.